There are moments in life when something quiet stirs within us. A subtle vibration, almost invisible, yet undeniably real. It can arrive through a dream that lingers after we wake, an image that moves us for reasons we cannot name, or a simple glance at an object on a shelf. And for a fleeting instant, it feels as if that object is gazing back at you, holding a secret about who you truly are. What is it about certain symbols that can touch us so deeply? Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who dedicated his life to exploring the mysteries of the human soul, understood that symbols are not just images. They are the forgotten language of the unconscious, speaking to us in whispers we've learned to ignore. And among these ancient languages, few symbols appear as universally across human history as the vessel we drink from, the cup. The cup as mirror of the self. The cup represents something profound in the architecture of human consciousness. It is a container, yes, but what does it contain? Not just liquid, but potential. Not just substance, but meaning. Throughout history, cups have carried sacred significance. The Holy Grail, the chalice of transformation, the simple bowl held in meditation. Each one asks the same question: what are you ready to receive? Jung believed that the symbols we're drawn to reveal the parts of our unconscious that are ready to emerge into awareness. The cup, in its elegant simplicity, becomes a mirror reflecting how we hold our experiences, how we contain our emotions, how we offer ourselves to the world and receive what life pours into us. Perhaps that's why in times of transition, when we feel uncertain about our direction or ready to understand ourselves more deeply, something within us instinctively seeks a symbol, a mirror that whispers without words, "This is who you are becoming." Before we continue deeper into this exploration, I want to invite you to join this community of seekers. If you're drawn to understanding the hidden dimensions of your psyche, to walking the pathways Jung mapped for us, then subscribe and become part of this journey. Because what we're doing here isn't just watching videos. We're remembering the language our souls have always spoken. Now, this video is your invitation to listen to the call of your own unconscious through the quiet wisdom of 4 cups. In a moment, I'll ask you to take part in a small symbolic ritual. You'll be invited to choose, intuitively and without overthinking, one among 4 vessels. The Crystal Goblet, elegant and transparent, catching light like frozen water. The clay mug, earthy and warm, shaped by human hands from the substance of the ground itself. The Silver Chalice, ornate and reflective, holding centuries of ritual and reverence. Or the simple wooden cup, humble and organic, carrying the essence of the forest within its grain. There are no right or wrong answers here. There are only mirrors, only paths within, waiting to be seen. Because sometimes what we need most is not a solution, but an image that helps us remember who we already are. So before we continue, pause, take a deep breath, close your eyes if you wish, and listen. Imagine yourself walking into a quiet room. The light is soft, filtering through a window you cannot quite see. The air feels still, expectant, as if the space itself has been waiting for you. And slowly, on a simple wooden table before you, 4 cups begin to appear, each with its own shape, its own presence, its own energy. They don't speak, but somehow they recognize you. They've been here before you arrived, and they'll remain after you leave. But right now, in this moment, One of them is calling your name. Don't think too hard. Don't analyze. Don't try to decide which cup is better or more spiritual or more meaningful. Just feel which of these vessels calls to you naturally, effortlessly. The crystal goblet, transparent and luminous, revealing everything it holds. The clay mug, solid and grounding, warm like hands cupped around morning coffee. The silver chalice, gleaming with reflected light, ceremonial and sacred. Or the simple wooden cup, simple and natural, carrying the essence of the forest within its grain. There is no right or wrong answer. Your choice does not define who you should be, but rather illuminates who you are right now, in this moment of your becoming. Each cup reflects an archetypal energy within the human soul. By choosing one, you open a doorway, not to the future, but to a hidden part of yourself that is ready to be seen, honored, and integrated. This is your ritual. Simple, intimate, symbolic. But as Jung himself taught, a true symbol has the power to transform because it speaks directly to the deepest layers of our awareness, bypassing the rational mind and touching something far more ancient. So take a moment longer, listen to the image that calls you, and when you're ready, follow the path toward the cup you have chosen. But before we reveal what each cup means, I need you to understand something crucial about how the unconscious works. If you chose the crystal goblet, you are standing at the threshold of clarity and truth. The crystal, with its transparent walls that hide nothing, has long been seen as a symbol of purity, honesty, and the courage to be seen completely. Unlike other vessels that conceal their contents, the crystal goblet reveals everything. What you pour into it becomes visible, undeniable, exposed to light. Its message is not one of protection or disguise. It speaks of transparency, of living without masks, of allowing your inner world to be witnessed. Perhaps you are someone who values authenticity above all else. You cannot tolerate pretense, either in yourself or others. You seek relationships where truth flows freely, where words match feelings, where the surface reflects what lies beneath. You are drawn to clarity like a moth to flame, even when that clarity burns. Jung spoke of the process of individuation as becoming conscious of what was previously unconscious. The crystal goblet embodies this journey perfectly. It represents the part of you that refuses to hide, that insists on bringing shadow into light, that believes healing happens only in the presence of honest seeing. If the crystal goblet called to you, your soul may be craving deeper authenticity in your life. Perhaps you've been wearing masks for too long, performing versions of yourself that don't quite fit. Perhaps you're tired of conversations that skim the surface, relationships built on pleasantries rather than truth, days lived in autopilot rather than genuine presence. The crystal teaches a particular kind of courage. Not the courage of the warrior who charges into battle, but the courage of the mystic who stands naked before the universe and says, "See me as I am." This is vulnerability as strength, openness as power. You understand that real connection happens only when we lower our defenses, that intimacy requires risk, that love demands we show our cracks, our contradictions, our complicated humanity. The crystal goblet doesn't pretend to be perfect. It simply refuses to hide its imperfections. But here's what many people don't understand about the crystal archetype, and this is something Jung would want you to hear. Yet, like every archetype, the crystal goblet carries a shadow. When transparency becomes rigid, it can turn into harsh judgment.
The same clarity that illuminates truth can become a weapon that cuts. You might find yourself unable to accept ambiguity, demanding absolute honesty even when gentleness would serve better, exposing truths that others aren't ready to face. The crystal can also be fragile. In your quest for authenticity, you might forget that some things need time to develop in darkness before they're ready for light. Not every feeling needs to be spoken immediately. Not every truth needs to be revealed the moment it's discovered. Sometimes wisdom lies in knowing when to hold and when to share. If you chose the Crystal Goblet, your soul may be asking you to balance your love of truth with compassion, to remember that clarity without kindness can become cruelty, that being seen is a gift, but so is being held gently while you are still becoming. The crystal whisper is clear and bright. Live authentically, speak truthfully, but remember that even light needs to soften sometimes. You don't have to perform transparency as a kind of spiritual achievement. You can simply be real moment by moment, allowing yourself the grace to be both clear and complex, both honest and still unfolding. The Crystal Goblet honors your commitment to truth, but it also reminds you that the most profound truths are often held in paradox, in mystery, in the spaces between certainty and doubt. You can be transparent and still have depths that remain unexplored. You can be seen and still be sacred.
If you chose the clay mug, then somewhere deep inside you there is a longing for groundedness, authenticity, and the quiet power of simplicity. The clay mug is not just a vessel, it is earth transformed by human hands, shaped with intention, fired in heat, and born into usefulness. Clay comes from the ground itself. It carries the memory of soil, of rain, of the slow, patient work of geological time. When we hold a clay mug, we hold something that was once part of the earth's body, now formed into a shape that serves, that warms our hands, that brings comfort on cold mornings. In nearly every ancient culture, clay has been the first material of creation. In the biblical tradition, humanity itself was formed from clay, breathed into life by divine spirit. In indigenous traditions worldwide, pottery represents the marriage of earth and creativity, substance and soul. The clay mug is humble, yes, but its humility is its power. If this was the cup that called to you, it might be because your soul recognizes in it your own practical wisdom. You are someone who builds, who creates, who takes raw material and transforms it into something useful and beautiful. You understand that real value doesn't come from flash or spectacle, but from substance, from work done well, from things that last. You are the person others turn to when they need something real. Not theories or abstractions, but actual help, actual presence, actual solutions. You know how to show up, how to be reliable, how to offer what's needed without fanfare or expectation of applause. Jung spoke of the self as the totality of the psyche, and the clay mug represents the grounded, embodied aspect of that totality. It's the part of you that knows wisdom lives in the body, in the hands, in the simple acts of daily living. You don't need elaborate rituals to touch the sacred. You find it in the weight of a warm cup, in the smell of coffee, in the quiet morning moment before the world makes its demands. If you chose the clay mug, your unconscious might be affirming your connection to the physical world, to the body, to the earth itself. Perhaps you've been living too much in your head lately, caught in endless thinking, planning, worrying. Perhaps you've been chasing achievements that look impressive but feel empty. The clay mug calls you home to simplicity, to the pleasure of small things done with full attention, to the radical act of being present in your own life, in your own body, in this very moment. It reminds you that enlightenment doesn't require you to transcend the physical world. Sometimes it requires you to finally, fully inhabit it. This cup teaches the wisdom of enough. Enough warmth, enough comfort, enough beauty. Not everything needs to be extraordinary. Not every moment needs to be peak experience. Sometimes the most profound peace comes from accepting the ordinary as sacred, from recognizing that this simple cup, this simple breath, this simple now is already complete. And yet there's something about the clay archetype that most people overlook, something that might change how you see yourself. But the clay mug also carries a shadow. When groundedness becomes too heavy, it can turn into stuckness. The same practicality that builds can become resistance to change. You might find yourself clinging to routine, suspicious of anything that disrupts your sense of stability, unwilling to take risks because they feel too uncertain, too ungrounded. The clay can also become dull if it's never challenged, never exposed to new heat, never reshaped. You might settle for comfort when your soul is actually hungry for growth. You might mistake safety for peace, routine for purpose, the familiar for the fulfilling. If the clay mug chose you, perhaps your soul is also whispering, "Stay rooted, yes, but remember that even trees grow toward light." You can be grounded and still reach. You can honor simplicity without making it a prison. You can love the earth and still let yourself be transformed by fire. The clay's message is warm and steady. You are enough exactly as you are. Your practical wisdom is sacred. Your simple presence is a gift. But don't let your love of stability keep you from the adventures your soul is quietly calling you toward. Even clay, when heated, becomes stronger. Even earth, when planted, becomes forest. The clay mug honors your groundedness, your reliability, your embodied wisdom, but it also invites you to remember that you were shaped by heat, by pressure, by transformation. You are not just earth. You are earth that has passed through fire and emerged as something new. Now, before we continue to the remaining 2 cups, I want to pause here. If this exploration is resonating with you, if you're beginning to see yourself in these symbols, then hit that subscribe button. Because we're building something here together. A community of people willing to look within, to ask difficult questions, to walk the path of self-knowledge that Jung mapped for us. And there's so much more to discover. Also, drop a comment below telling me which cup you chose and what it revealed to you. Your reflection might be exactly what another soul needs to hear today. We're not just viewers here, we're witnesses to each other's becoming. If you chose the clay mug, then somewhere deep inside you there is a longing for groundedness, authenticity, and the quiet power of simplicity. The clay mug is not just a vessel, it is earth transformed by human hands, shaped with intention, fired in heat, and born into usefulness. Clay comes from the ground itself. It carries the memory of soil, of rain, of the slow, patient work of geological time. When we hold a clay mug, we hold something that was once part of the Earth's body,
now formed into a shape that serves, that warms our hands, that brings comfort on cold mornings. In nearly every ancient culture, clay has been the first material of creation. In the biblical tradition, humanity itself was formed from clay, breathed into life by divine spirit. In indigenous traditions worldwide, pottery represents the marriage of earth and creativity, substance and soul. The clay mug is humble, yes, but its humility is its power. If this was the cup that called to you, it might be because your soul recognizes in it your own practical wisdom. You are someone who builds, who creates, who takes raw material and transforms it into something useful and beautiful. You understand that real value doesn't come from flash or spectacle, but from substance, from work done well, from things that last. You are the person others turn to when they need something real. Not theories or abstractions, but actual help, actual presence, actual solutions. You know how to show up, how to be reliable, how to offer what's needed without fanfare or expectation of applause. Jung spoke of the self as the totality of the psyche, and the clay mug represents the grounded, embodied aspect of that totality. It's the part of you that knows wisdom lives in the body, in the hands, in the simple acts of daily living. You don't need elaborate rituals to touch the sacred. You find it in the weight of a warm cup, in the smell of coffee, in the quiet morning moment before the world makes its demands. If you chose the clay mug, your unconscious might be affirming your connection to the physical world, to the body, to the earth itself. Perhaps you've been living too much in your head lately, caught in endless thinking, planning, worrying. Perhaps you've been chasing achievements that look impressive but feel empty. The clay mug calls you home to simplicity, to the pleasure of small things done with full attention, to the radical act of being present in your own life, in your own body, in this very moment. It reminds you that enlightenment doesn't require you to transcend the physical world. Sometimes it requires you to finally, fully inhabit it. This cup teaches the wisdom of enough. Enough warmth, enough comfort, enough beauty. Not everything needs to be extraordinary. Not every moment needs to be peak experience. Sometimes the most profound peace comes from accepting the ordinary as sacred, from recognizing that this simple cup, this simple breath, this simple now is already complete. And yet there's something about the clay archetype that most people overlook, something that might change how you see yourself. But the clay mug also carries a shadow. When groundedness becomes too heavy, it can turn into stuckness. The same practicality that builds can become resistance to change. You might find yourself clinging to routine, suspicious of anything that disrupts your sense of stability, unwilling to take risks because they feel too uncertain, too ungrounded. The clay can also become dull if it's never challenged, never exposed to new heat, never reshaped. You might settle for comfort when your soul is actually hungry for growth. You might mistake safety for peace, routine for purpose, the familiar for the fulfilling. If the clay mug chose you, perhaps your soul is also whispering, "Stay rooted, yes, but remember that even trees grow toward light." You can be grounded and still reach. You can honor simplicity without making it a prison. You can love the earth and still let yourself be transformed by fire. The clay's message is warm and steady. You are enough exactly as you are. Your practical wisdom is sacred. Your simple presence is a gift. But don't let your love of stability keep you from the adventures your soul is quietly calling you toward. Even clay, when heated, becomes stronger. Even earth, when planted, becomes forest. The clay mug honors your groundedness, your reliability, your embodied wisdom, but it also invites you to remember that you were shaped by heat, by pressure, by transformation. You are not just earth. You are earth that has passed through fire and emerged as something new. Now, before we continue to the remaining 2 cups, I want to pause here. If this exploration is resonating with you, if you're beginning to see yourself in these symbols, then hit that subscribe button. Because we're building something here together. A community of people willing to look within, to ask difficult questions, to walk the path of self-knowledge that Jung mapped for us. And there's so much more to discover. Also, drop a comment below telling me which cup you chose and what it revealed to you. Your reflection might be exactly what another soul needs to hear today. We're not just viewers here, we're witnesses to each other's becoming.
If you chose the Silver Chalice, then your soul carries the mark of the seeker, the mystic, the one who knows that life contains dimensions beyond what the ordinary eye can see. You are not made only of flesh and daily concerns. You are made of questions that have no answers, longings that point beyond the horizon, intuitions that whisper of something sacred. The Silver Chalice stands apart from ordinary vessels. It is not meant for casual use, for hurried mornings or distracted sipping. It is ceremonial, reserved for moments when the veil between worlds grows thin, when we gather to mark transitions, to honor mystery, to touch something eternal. Silver itself has always carried symbolic weight. It reflects like a mirror, catching light and throwing it back transformed. It doesn't absorb, it reveals. In alchemical tradition, silver represents the lunar principle, the feminine wisdom, the receptive consciousness that receives divine inspiration and reflects it into the world. If you chose this cup, it may be because you are a deep questioner. You cannot simply accept surface explanations. You need to understand the why beneath the why, the meaning behind the meaning. You sense that ordinary life, as important as it is not the whole story. That beneath the visible world runs a current of invisible significance. Jung dedicated much of his work to exploring what he called the numinous, those experiences that touch us with a sense of the sacred, the transcendent, the wholly other. The Silver Chalice embodies this dimension of human experience. It represents the part of you that prays, that meditates, that seeks communion with something greater than the isolated self. Perhaps you've always felt slightly out of step with the purely material world. While others focus entirely on careers, possessions, status, you find yourself asking, but what does it mean? What is it for? What happens to the soul in all this striving? You're not rejecting the practical world, but you cannot live there alone. You need beauty, ritual, meaning, connection to the invisible dimensions of existence. If the Silver Chalice called to you, your unconscious might be affirming your spiritual hunger. Perhaps you've been neglecting this part of yourself lately, caught up in the demands of survival, of productivity, of keeping up with a world that has little patience for contemplation. The chalice calls you back to ritual, to sacred pause, to the recognition that some moments deserve to be set apart, honored, treated as holy. Not because holiness is separate from ordinary life, but because bringing consciousness to the sacred transforms everything it touches. This cup teaches the wisdom of reverence, of slowing down enough to actually taste what you're drinking, to feel what you're feeling, to see what you're seeing. It reminds you that the divine is not somewhere else, waiting for you to be good enough to access it. The divine is here now, in this breath, in this moment of attention, in this willingness to recognize that everything is already sacred. But there's a dimension to the chalice archetype that can become a trap if you're not careful. Yet, like every archetype, the silver chalice carries a shadow. When spirituality becomes separated from ordinary life, it can turn into escapism. The same mystical sensitivity that opens doors can become a way of avoiding the difficult, messy, embodied work of being human. You might find yourself so focused on transcendence that you neglect your body, your relationships, your responsibilities. You might chase peak experiences while dismissing the sacred that lives in washing dishes, paying bills, having difficult conversations. You might use spiritual concepts as shields against pain rather than tools for transformation. The chalice can also become elitist. In your quest for deeper meaning, you might unconsciously judge those who seem content with simpler lives, who don't share your hunger for the mystical. You might mistake complexity for depth, obscurity for wisdom, spiritual performance for genuine transformation. If the silver chalice chose you, perhaps your soul is also whispering, honor your spiritual nature, yes, but remember that the sacred and the ordinary are not separate. You don't need to leave the world to find God. You need to bring your full presence into the world and discover that it was holy all along. The chalice's message is luminous and deep. Your spiritual hunger is real and valid. Your need for meaning is not weakness, but wisdom. But don't let your love of the transcendent pull you away from the incarnate. The greatest mystics didn't escape the world. They loved it so completely that they saw its divine nature everywhere. The chalice honors your capacity for reverence, for wonder, for sacred seeing. But it also reminds you that every cup is holy when held with consciousness. Every moment is ceremony when lived with full presence. You don't need silver to touch the sacred. You need only willingness to see.
If you chose the wooden cup, then perhaps you are awakening to one of life's most profound truths, that wisdom lives in simplicity, that strength comes from flexibility, and that the most enduring things are often the most humble. The wooden cup is carved from a living tree. It carries within its grain the memory of seasons, of growth rings marking years of patient expansion, of roots drawing nourishment from dark soil, of branches reaching toward light. When we hold wood, we hold time itself compressed into form. Wood is organic, imperfect, alive even after it's been shaped. It absorbs what we pour into it, taking on the scent of tea, the stain of wine, the oils from our hands. Unlike crystal that remains forever unchanged, unlike silver that reflects without absorbing, wood becomes. It ages. It develops character. It tells the story of its use. If this was the cup that called to you, it might be because your soul recognizes in it your own organic wisdom. You are someone who understands that real knowledge doesn't come from books alone, but from lived experience, from mistakes made and lessons learned, from the slow, patient accumulation of understanding that only time can bring. You are the person others come to for perspective, not because you have all the answers, but because you've learned to live with questions, not because you're perfect, but because you've made peace with imperfection. You know that wisdom isn't about knowing everything. It's about accepting what you don't know with grace. Jung believed that the second half of life calls us toward a different kind of development, not the ambitious striving of youth, but the deepening, the integration, the acceptance of paradox and complexity. The wooden cup represents this mature consciousness, this elder wisdom that doesn't need to prove itself, that can simply be. If you chose the wooden cup, your unconscious might be affirming your connection to natural rhythms, to organic timing, to the understanding that some things cannot be rushed. Perhaps you've been pushing too hard lately, trying to force growth, demanding immediate results from processes that need time to unfold. The wooden cup calls you back to patience, to trust in natural development, to remember that trees don't grow faster by being anxious about their growth. They simply keep drawing nourishment from soil and light, and growth happens as a consequence of that faithful attention. This cup teaches the wisdom of enough time. Not everything needs to happen now. Not every question needs immediate answering. Not every problem needs instant solving. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is wait, watch, tend, and trust that the organic intelligence of life knows what it's doing. And yet, the wooden cup holds a secret that might surprise you. But the wooden cup also carries a shadow. When patience becomes passivity, when acceptance becomes resignation, when organic timing becomes an excuse for avoiding necessary action, the gift turns to limitation. You might find yourself so committed to letting things unfold naturally that you never take bold action, never push past comfort, never challenge the status quo. You might mistake inertia for patience, avoidance for acceptance, fear for wisdom. The wood can also become rigid if it dries out, if it's never oiled, never cared for, never used. You might let your wisdom become dogma, your experience become the only valid experience, your way become the only way. The elder can become the tyrant if they forget they're still learning. If the wooden cup chose you, perhaps your soul is also whispering, trust natural timing, yes, but remember that nature includes storms, fires, earthquakes. Sometimes growth requires disruption. Sometimes wisdom means taking the risk, making the leap, doing the thing that terrifies you. The wooden cup's message is ancient and patient. You have lived enough to know that rushing rarely serves. Your accumulated wisdom is real, but don't let your patience become a hiding place. Don't let your acceptance of imperfection become tolerance for situations that need changing. Even trees, when conditions demand it, can grow in new directions. The wooden cup honors your organic wisdom, your patient presence, your acceptance of natural rhythms, but it also reminds you that wood comes from living trees, and living trees are always growing, always reaching, always responding to light. You are not finished. You are not done. You are still becoming.
Now that you've met the crystal goblet
the clay mug, the silver chalice, and the wooden cup, pause for a moment and breathe. Let their images linger in your mind. 4 vessels, 4 voices of the same ancient language, each whispering a truth that belongs to you. Because here's the secret Jung spent his lifetime trying to help us understand. You are not just one cup. You are the entire collection. You contain all 4. Inside you lives the crystal's clarity, the part that insists on truth, that refuses to hide, that believes authenticity is the only path to real connection. It's the voice that says, "Let me be seen as I am." But you are also the clay's groundedness, the practical builder who knows how to show up, how to be useful, how to transform raw material into something that serves. It's the hands that work, the feet that stay planted, the heart that finds sacred in the simple. But beneath that solidity, there is the chalice's mystical hunger. The soul that seeks, the consciousness that knows there's more than meets the eye. It's the part that prays, that wonders, that opens to mystery without needing to solve it. Then comes the wooden cup, the elder wisdom that has learned patience, that trusts organic timing, that understands some things cannot be rushed or forced. It's the accumulated knowledge of your lived experience, the scars that have become stories, the mistakes that have become understanding. Each of these cups is an archetype, a living force in the landscape of your psyche. Jung believed that when we meet these inner figures, we meet parts of ourselves that have been waiting to be acknowledged, integrated, brought into conscious relationship. They are not outside you, they are you. Your unconscious brought them forward not as decoration, but as revelation, a map of what your soul contains, what it's ready to integrate, what it needs you to see. And here's something crucial I need you to understand before we go further. Think of them as elements of an inner ecosystem. The crystal clarifies your vision. The clay grounds your action. The chalice opens your spirit. The wooden cup deepens your wisdom. When they coexist in harmony, you become whole. Clear like crystal, grounded like clay, open like the chalice, wise like wood. Perhaps today only one of them spoke the loudest. That's natural. At different stages of our journey, different archetypes take the lead. But the others never vanish. They wait like seeds under soil, ready to emerge when the season changes, when the conditions are right, when you're ready to integrate another dimension of your being. So ask yourself, what is your inner collection telling you now? Which part of you needs attention, nourishment, recognition? Are you being called to speak more truth, to ground more fully, to open more deeply, or to trust more patiently? Because your answer will not come from logic. It will come from that quiet knowing beneath your thoughts, from the intuitive wisdom that recognized itself in one of these vessels, from the soul that's been waiting for you to finally listen. Before we move to our closing reflections, I want to invite you one more time. If you're finding value in this exploration, if something here is touching you, subscribe to this channel. Because what we're doing together is rare. We're creating a space where the language of the soul can be spoken, where Jung's insights can guide us home to ourselves. And I don't want you to miss what's coming next. And remember this, symbols don't speak in commands. They speak in invitations. They don't tell you what to do. They remind you of what you already know, what you always knew, what you forgot in the noise of living. So let the collection inside you breathe again. Let the crystal guide your honesty. Let the clay anchor your presence. Let the chalice open your reverence. Let the wooden cup deepen your patience. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine a shelf in your inner world, and on that shelf, all 4 cups rest together. The crystal catching light, the clay warm and solid, the silver gleaming with mystery, the wood aged and patient. They don't compete, they coexist, just as your clarity doesn't erase your groundedness and your mysticism doesn't cancel your wisdom. You are not one thing. You are all seasons, all materials, all ways of holding what life pours into you. And maybe that's what Jung meant when he said that individuation, becoming who you truly are, is not about perfection, it's about wholeness. It's about bringing all the scattered parts of yourself into conscious relationship. Now stay here for a moment in the silence after the story, in that sacred pause where the mind softens and the heart begins to listen. What did your cup show you? Not in words, but in feeling. Did it bring recognition, longing, peace, or challenge? Whatever arose, that is the message. Because symbols don't communicate through language. They communicate through resonance. They awaken what logic forgets, the ancient knowledge already living in your bones, in your blood, in the quiet spaces between your thoughts. Jung believed that every encounter with a symbol is a meeting with the self, the vast, unbroken center of who we are. When you felt drawn to a cup, it wasn't random. It was your unconscious saying, "Look here, this is the part of you that's ready to be seen, to be honored, to be brought into the light of consciousness." The crystal whispered of clarity and the courage to be transparent. The clay spoke of groundedness and the wisdom of embodied presence. The chalice offered mystery and the hunger for sacred meaning. And the wooden cup revealed patience and the deep knowing that only time can teach.
These cups are more than metaphors. They are living mirrors of the psyche. In choosing one, you didn't just express a preference. You answered a call from deep within. You gave form to something invisible that has been waiting, perhaps for years, to be acknowledged. When Jung studied dreams, myths, and symbols across cultures, he discovered something extraordinary. Humanity keeps returning to the same archetypal images. The vessel, the container, the cup appears in every tradition, every era, every corner of human experience. Why? Because these are not cultural inventions, they are psychic constants. They emerge from what Jung called the collective unconscious, the shared field of symbols that connects every human being across time and space. So when you chose your cup today, you didn't just engage in a personality exercise. You answered a call from deep within. You gave form to something invisible that has been waiting, perhaps for years, to be acknowledged. Maybe that's why it feels strangely intimate, as if the symbol itself knows you. Because it does. The unconscious speaks through images, through forms that bypass rational thought and touch something deeper. And in that moment, when the crystal or the clay or the chalice or the wood called to you, your soul was answering the oldest invitation there is, to remember. Remember that you are not separate from the great patterns of human experience, that your struggles, your questions, your longings are part of a story much larger than your individual life, that you are both utterly unique and completely universal. And now, let the image of your chosen cup grow inside you.
See it not as something static, but alive. It changes as you change. It fills and empties. It serves and receives. It becomes a companion, a symbol that walks beside you quietly, reminding you who you are when you forget. Because the truth is, you didn't find this video by accident. You were guided here by something deeper than curiosity. Call it synchronicity, intuition, or soul timing. But know this, your unconscious wanted to speak to you, and today it found the perfect image to do so. So take this moment as a conversation between your inner world and the outer one, between the seen and the unseen. And remember what Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Each cup you saw is a doorway. The crystal opens toward authenticity. The clay opens toward embodiment. The chalice opens toward transcendence. The wooden cup opens toward wisdom. But all doors lead to the same place, to the heart of your being, to the wholeness that has always been waiting for you to claim it. When you walk away from this experience, don't leave it behind like a dream forgotten at dawn. Let it accompany you. Let its truth grow through your daily life, in how you speak, how you choose, how you receive what life offers you. Because every small act of awareness nourishes the seed you just planted. You have touched your symbol. Now, let it transform you. And now, as the images begin to fade, as you prepare to return to your ordinary day, take one last look at the cup that chose you. Feel its presence not as something external, but as something that has always lived within you, waiting to be recognized. Because by now, you know the truth. The collection of cups you encountered was never out there. It has always been you. Every vessel, every quality, every gift is a fragment of your wholeness. The part that seeks truth, the part that builds, the part that reveres mystery, and the part that simply knows. This journey was never about discovering who you are. It was always about remembering who you've been all along. The crystal taught you that transparency is a form of courage, that being seen, truly seen, is both terrifying and liberating. The clay showed you that wisdom lives in the body, in the hands, in the simple acts of showing up. The chalice helped you understand that your hunger for meaning is not escapism, but a valid dimension of human experience. And the wooden cup revealed that patience is not passivity, but trust in the intelligence of organic unfolding.
Together, they form the 4 directions of your inner compass: clarity, groundedness, reverence, and wisdom. 4 sacred elements of wholeness, guiding you through the seasons of your becoming. When Jung spoke of individuation, he described it not as perfection, but as integration, a long, beautiful return to oneself. And this is what you've just begun. The reunion of the fragments, the recognition that every part of you, even the parts you've rejected or ignored, belongs to the whole. You have entered this exploration as a seeker. You leave as a witness. Because now you can see what was hidden, that the path was never about finding the right cup. It was about realizing that every choice, every symbol, every instinct was a language your soul has been speaking all along. The cups have spoken in their silence. Now the question is, will you listen? When you wake tomorrow, when you touch the world again with your bare hands, remember that the sacred is not far away. It lives in the way light falls across your table, in the weight of a cup in your hands, in the warmth of liquid touching your lips. Every act of awareness is a ritual, every moment of presence a prayer, every pause a seed of wisdom taking root. The cups have gifted you a symbol, but it's not meant to be admired from a distance. It's meant to be lived, to grow through your choices, to whisper through your decisions, to guide you home to yourself. So when doubt visits again, and it will, close your eyes and return here. See the shelf with all 4 cups resting together. Feel their different energies, their complementary gifts, and listen, because they will answer. They always do. The crystal will tell you to speak your truth. The clay will tell you to ground your action. The chalice will tell you to honor the mystery. And the wooden cup will remind you to trust the timing. These are not 4 separate vessels. They are 4 expressions of the same divine wholeness, the one that says, you are complete, you are enough, you are already everything you need to become. So walk gently, speak truly, build wisely, seek deeply, because every moment you choose consciousness over habit, every time you pause instead of react, you make the collection inside you more whole, more integrated, more alive. And perhaps somewhere out there, another wandering soul will encounter a cup and feel it looking back, and something deep within them will stir, just as it did in you. That is how awakening spreads. Not through preaching, but through resonance. Not through teaching, but through recognition. Because the soul does not evolve through knowledge, it evolves through remembering what it has always known. You have remembered yourself. The cups rest in silence. The symbols have spoken. And your story, reborn, begins again. And so we arrive at the end, or perhaps the beginning, of something deeper. You've walked through your inner collection. You've listened to what your soul wanted to show you. And now it's time to bring that wisdom back into the world. What you just experienced wasn't a game or a simple personality test. It was a mirror, a quiet conversation between you and the unseen part of yourself, the one that speaks through symbols, through feelings, through the language that existed before words. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Today, you've taken a powerful step toward that awareness. By choosing a cup, you allowed a part of your unconscious to reveal itself. That's not coincidence. That's communication. That's the soul speaking. Now the question is, what will you do with it? Maybe you'll journal about what you felt. Maybe you'll pay attention to which vessels catch your eye in daily life. Maybe you'll begin to see your choices not as random, but as expressions of these deeper patterns living within you. Remember, the collection never disappears. It lives within your awareness, your choices, the pauses between thoughts. Every time you slow down enough to feel, you return to that shelf where all 4 cups rest together. If this journey resonated with you, share in the comments below which cup chose you and what it awakened within you. Your reflection might become the mirror that helps another soul see itself more clearly. We're not just individuals here. We're a community of seekers, walking Jung's path together, helping each other remember. And if you want to keep exploring the hidden dimensions of the psyche, the symbols, the archetypes, the dreams that shape our inner world, subscribe and continue walking with us. Because here, every video is a map, every symbol a message, every exploration a bridge between what is known and what is forgotten. This is not the end of your journey. It is simply another turn in your path of becoming.
And as you walk forward into your life, may you carry this truth like a light in your chest. You are the crystal that clarifies. You are the clay that grounds. You are the chalice that opens. You are the wooden cup that knows. You are not separate from wholeness. You are wholeness itself. And every breath you take is a quiet reminder that your soul is still becoming, still unfolding, still calling you home to the truth of who you've always been. The cups are waiting. The journey continues. And you, beautiful seeker, are exactly where you need to be.